I think ultimately the resolution of all this is almost to create like a Premier League of golf. I think you may the numbers, whatever number you come up with, whether it's 70, 80, 60. I think if you're going to do that, and Rory mentioned the events around the world, and I don't know the number, whether it's 10, whether it's 12, because then you would include the major events. I think the one solution for something like that is that you have this Premier League of golf, and what you're doing, and as he was talking about all these different tours, they all feed into one thing. So you've got the PGA Tour over here, you got the DP World Tour over here, and I think you're going to a possible solution is that basically, say you take a number of 20 players that get, if you had 70 players, 20 players get relegated every season, and 10 players off the DP World Tour, and 10 players off the PGA Tour that come and go, and players have an opportunity to work themselves up there. Now, do you decide that those top players are based on world ranking? I don't know. I think certainly players that have done things over the year are important, but there's other ways to give them access, like Rory was saying. If I see that as the only way, if you end up combining everything, Matt. And again, I have no information that this is true or not. I think this is the reality of the game. If you want the top players to play all the time, I think that would be something that might exist, or the possibility exists. I understand that. It was funny. I was out at Genesis, and I worked Pebble Beach. I worked Genesis. I worked Bay Hill, and I was talking to one of the tournament referees, and I said, when I was playing, I wouldn't like the fact that there were 70 players and there was a cut, but broadcasting, it's pretty good when it's a smaller field. And, is it more competitive? I don't know. I think we haven't seen it enough. Like Rory says, we don't know if it's going to be competitive enough. But I think if ultimately there is some resolution to getting the best players back together to play on a regular basis, it wouldn't shock me if there's something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Carney, the thing that I'm not as comfortable with is that there seems to be a general train of thought right now in the game that the top players, the stars of the game, were almost born into the position, and to a certain extent that the FedEx Cup points and these signature events are structured in such a way that the rich get richer. I think your comments about the pathways for other players are well founded, because part of the thing that I find enjoyable in the game of golf is watching the ascent of young players. Now, we've seen that with Dunlap, we've seen that with Jake Knapp, but those are outliners. Those are the rare ones that we get a chance to see, and I hope that there are opportunities where we can see players evolve. I hope that there are opportunities where we can see larger fields. I hope there are opportunities where there's more equity in terms of the point distribution, because I think it's hard to win on the PGA Tour regardless of where they're at. And to that point, even when we're talking about this massive sum of money that came in from the group called this Strategic Sports Group, they're talking about a huge sum of whether it's that amount of money or the potential second $1.5 billion going towards a very, very small group of stars. I understand why they're doing it, because they want to make it attractive to them in the marketplace when they can make other choices, as you duly noted. But I'm wondering, let's go back to where you were. You mentioned it when you were playing actively. When you were out there as a guy that was grinding it out, to see how much is being invested in just the top guys, at some point, don't you look at it and say, well, what happens if I don't have the opportunities? How am I going to be able to evolve to the point where I can compete at the same level as those guys? It seems to me, with all due respect, that there's a level of imbalance.
I absolutely agree with you, Matt. When I played this game, it was never for the money. I mean, I loved it, and obviously I made a living off it, and now I make a living off of that based on what I had done and the ability and certainly the confidence that people have in having me work as a broadcaster. The thing that scares me is that it's becoming more a greed thing, I think. And that's, as I mentioned that before, I think that's what's turning maybe some golf fans off. Um, it's going to be a challenge as to how they do this. As I said, it's I mean, even myself. I mean, I'm sitting there and the announcement made, and okay, we're going to try to take care of the guys that are out here and then the future guys. But think about the people that have helped make the tour, mold the tour to what it is. That's important. I think we can't get away from what golf represents as far as a facilitator for charities and the raising of money for charities, because I think that's what separated golf for such a long time. Over the years, all these tournaments generated money for their communities, which is something that, having been a tournament director, I understand a lot more than a lot of players understand. And to me, that was an important part of it. And I think when it comes entirely about money, it loses something. It loses some of its character. I think it loses some of its passion. And again, I have no problem. I mean, the best players in the world are just phenomenal, and they do so many things. And each of these players do so many things to benefit people. But what I don't want to just see that it becomes beneficial to them, because and maybe that's not the right word. I mean, as a whole, I want it to be extremely beneficial. But when it becomes so selfish, you start to look like all the other sports, and that's what I don't want. I mean, there's always a changing environment. There's always a changing, sort of definition and focus of who are we trying to attract? And obviously, life has evolved, the world has evolved in a lot of different areas, but that's what the purity of the game of golf. I don't want to see that go, and I just have a fear that with what I would consider some greed. I mean, how much is enough? At what point, how much is enough? It's entertainment, and I understand trying to put a dollar value on the entertainment, and I think that's very important. But I just don't want the game of golf to lose what I truly think it represents.